Key races and issues that impact voters the most. First, I want to introduce you to two wonderful people who've agreed to be here this evening. Ilhan Omar, Democratic analyst, and Michelle Benson, former state senator, former deputy majority leader of the Minnesota State Senate. Let's go over the key races, and then I'll get to you guys and all your wisdom. Let's talk about, we are going to be looking at first the 5th Congressional District. This is obviously a big race. We do not have any results in for that race. That's why you see no numbers there. We also are going to be following the 7th Republican primary, which is between Steve Boyd and Michelle Fischbach. That we do have some numbers in, and we will be taking a look at those right here. There we go. We've got Michelle Fischbach leading with just, well, 22% of the vote, 66 to 33%. Very interesting. All right, let's go, folks, to District number 2, which is the Republican primary. District number 2 is being held by, currently by Angie Craig. The Republican primary pits Joe Tayrob, and this race has already been called by the AP. That's why there's a check mark there. Very interesting. Versus Tyler Ram. And let's go on. The U.S. Senate seat. This is a big one. The Republican primary for U.S. Senate pits Joe Frazier versus Royce White. And Royce White is coming out ahead so far with 16% of the vote in. We are going to be talking about that with our Republican and Democratic analysts because that's an important race. Also, the U.S. Senate primary, Republican primary in Wisconsin. That race has actually been called already, and that has been called for Eric Hovde. Eric Hovde will face off against Tammy Baldwin in November. You can see him winning clearly by clearly beating a bearded Charles Barman easily, 87% to 6%. Then we want to go to, are we going to the 3rd Congressional District, or are we going to go back to the 5th? Well, let's go back to the 5th Congressional District, where we don't have results in. What are you looking for, Abu?
Yeah, I'm looking for two things. So first, the suburban turnout. Don Samuels knows if he wants to be able to, take on the world, take on Ilhan Omar, he's going to have to dominate in the suburbs. And then the second piece is the city turnout baseline or flat? A combination of those two things presents an opportunity for Don Samuels. Otherwise, I think Ilhan Omar is in a strong position.
I'd like to go to the U.S. Senate race, the Republican primary in Minnesota. This is the one that a lot of Republicans are looking at. It's got two candidates here, Royce White, who got the nomination, and Joe Frazier. This is a tough one for Republicans.
Yes, and I was at the convention, and I'll say Royce White wasn't completely transparent about his record, and that impacted the delegates' ability to look at these two candidates and weigh them. It is always going to be an uphill battle for Republicans to beat Amy Klobuchar.
Yes, the winner of this faces Amy Klobuchar in November, who has a history of winning by double digits.
Absolutely.
Very big advantage usually.
And wins, I think she wins every county except maybe one. So wasn't ready for that information tonight, but she dominates. And I think Royce White comes with a lot of baggage and makes it hard to climb up that hill to beat Senator Klobuchar.
Well, we're going to talk more about that race because it is a statewide race, but we want to go to our Caroline Cummings, who is live in District 5 tonight, keeping a close eye on the Ilhan Omar versus Don Samuels race. Caroline, what can you tell us? We haven't gotten any numbers in. I don't know if you're getting any inside info there on Nicollet Avenue at Ilhan Omar's, well, she's going to calling a victory party, but she hasn't, it's not a victory party yet.
Yes, good evening, Esme. So yeah, you're right. I'm off of Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis. Just across the way is her watch party with her supporters watching those results come in. But no information I can share beyond what has been reported. These campaigns are just kind of waiting to see what will come of this rematch. Of course, they faced each other 2 years ago in the 2022 primary. And 2 years ago, Omar narrowly beat Samuels by just 2 percentage points, just under 2,500 votes. Omar this time around isn't leaving anything to chance. She's been really focusing on this primary, knocking doors, running ads. Senator Bernie Sanders, a progressive heavyweight, even came here within the last week and a half to campaign on her behalf. Meanwhile, Don Samuels knows just how close he came to winning this thing last time, and he says he's learned lessons on how to improve his operation this go around, and we caught up with him at his watch party across town earlier tonight. Take a listen to what he had to say.
There's a feeling that this campaign is very much stronger than the last one. As you know, we had a close call, and that inspired many people who are on the fence, who to think with a little more of their help, we could have won. And so that feeling of regret and apology turned into energy, and people just jumped on board in a way that I've never seen before.
Now, the 5th district here is deep blue, so the election will likely go for a Democrat in November. So that leaves tonight the real competition here with the Democratic primary. Again, a rematch between Ilhan Omar and Don Samuels. And this is also, Esme, getting some national attention because Ilhan Omar is a member of the progressive wing of the Democratic caucus on the Hill in the U.S. House, known as the Squad, and 2 members of the Squad faced primary challenges earlier this summer and saw defeats there. But her campaign is feeling good. They have really invested in this ground game, and so they're just waiting to see what comes of it tonight. Esme.
All right, thank you so much, Caroline, reporting live from the headquarters of Ilhan Omar. Let's talk about this 5th district race, because Ilhan Omar is somebody that Republicans love to hate. Basically, they let's be honest here, they target her, they talk about her. Your thoughts about how she's viewed in this primary? Do Republicans think that perhaps Don Samuels could pull something off here?
Well, I think there are Republicans who raise money off Ilhan Omar.
They certainly do.
I think there are a lot of Minnesotans and people in the 5th Congressional District who might be served better by Don Samuels because he'll deliver for the district. He'll be focused less on being a polarizing figure and more on somebody who's serving. And so I think that would be the way Republicans would look at it.
But, you know, the thing is, she is so popular in this district. That district, the 5th Congressional District, is 30% more Democratic than the average district all around the country. It's a progressive haven.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons she does so well.
There's no question. She is a lightning rod both in terms of support and opposition. She has a base that will never leave her, and she has voters in her district that will never support her. The decision will be tonight. Does she still have a majority, or has something changed in the last 2 years?
All right, we still don't have any votes in yet, but still ahead. We're going to continue to follow that race. We'll also head to Wisconsin for a closer look at the issues voters there are deciding on, and we'll hear from voters. But as we go to break, here's a look at some of the other congressional races around the state. Is she popular in this district? Welcome back to our special coverage of the 2024 primary. We are taking an in-depth look at some critical races. Look at this race. This is the 5th Congressional District. Not that many votes in, 10%. Ilhan Omar, a narrow lead over Don Samuels. Is this going to be a repeat of 2022 when this was a squeaker? Ilhan Omar just barely getting by with 2,000 votes.
Look, Don Samuels is hoping that lightning can strike twice. I think Ilhan Omar over the past year and a half has said maybe I should start campaigning more intensely, making sure that this doesn't happen again. You clearly show from these early numbers that Don Samuels has shown he still has support. The question is, will it be enough?
Right, and 10%, we don't know where that 10% is coming in from, but still, Don Samuels running very strongly against the incumbent Ilhan Omar. Let's go to the U.S. Senate race, the Republican primary there, because this is also a tight race. This is between Royce White and Joe Frazier. We've got some numbers here, if we can pull them up. This is a very interesting situation. 38.3% to Royce White. He is the Republican nominee, and he's got, and we've got Joe Frazier there. Quickly, Michelle, what does this show?
I'm seeing some strength coming out of CD6 and CD8. So CD1, completely the opposite. So let's see where results keep coming in across the course of the evening. See what happens with Joe Frazier and Royce White.
All right, let's go to Wisconsin because they also have a primary. David Schuman is live in Hudson. The race for Republican race for the Senate, in the Senate primary, has already been called. Eric Hovde has won. What are people in Wisconsin saying?
Yeah, well, Esme, it's a special kind of voter who comes out on a day like today, a primary election, when turnout, of course, is typically much lower than what you would see in a presidential election like we're going to see in November. Now, the voters we spoke to today had really a mix of motivations for coming out here in Hudson. Many told us that civic duty was driving them to the polls, and others had specific races or questions on the ballot that they wanted to be heard on. For those people, the big topic were those referendum questions. There were 2 of them, and they dealt with the authority the governor has to spend federal funds, such as disaster relief money, for example. Should he have that decision-making power, or should he need approval from state lawmakers?
I'm always motivated to vote to express my opinion, and especially because there are some measures on the ballot to strip the governor of his ability to handle federal money. That matters.
It's about civic duty. We need to be here. Local elections are important. They, reflect and impact the, the federal elections. So we do that. I do that every year.
For those Republican voters today, there was also a chance, as you mentioned, to select who's going to be running against the incumbent, Tammy Baldwin, for one of the 2 Wisconsin Senate seats. Now, Eric Hovde has been declared the winner already. He was the favorite, and both he and Baldwin are spending big money on this race.
Baldwin is the favorite, but not an overwhelming favorite. And if national conditions were to go against the Democratic Party, then Hovde would have a real chance to win. But he's going to have to continue pouring his own money into the campaign in order to make that happen.
I just checked in a moment ago with the Hudson City Clerk. Happy to report she said there were no notable issues today at the polls. It went as smoothly as she would hope. And the absentee ballots were being counted most of today in City Hall right behind me. She told us about 1 in 5 voters did vote absentee, but it appears that they have stopped that for the night, and the unofficial results are being posted on the St. Croix County website, if you want to get the results there for what it's worth at this point. So back to you, Esme.
And we also have the results on our website, WCCO.com/results. Thank you so much, David. We'll check back in with you a little later on. I want to bring Abu and Michelle back. Michelle, our Republican analyst, Abu, our Democratic analyst. And let's look at those 5th district numbers again to see if there are any new numbers again. This is the marquee race. This race is important because this is such an overwhelmingly Democratic district that the winner of the primary is likely to go on and serve in Congress. Right now, with just the same amount in, 10% of the vote, Ilhan Omar, 50.8%, Don Samuels, 47.6%, a very, very strong showing from Don Samuels. One of the things that really stands out here is that Ilhan Omar has been working very hard in recent weeks trying to get the vote out, the Democratic vote out on her side. She's the endorsed party candidate. Your thoughts about these early votes?
So far, I mean, it's early. We don't know where this is going to go. But I think there's a combination of factors going on here. The first is Democrats were a little bit depressed with Joe Biden on the ballot. That's starting to change now with Kamala Harris. So there might be depressed base turnout in the city. On top of that, you add in the Gaza war in Israel. That's going to impact lots of communities in the suburbs. A combination of those two things. Let's see how it plays out as the night goes on.
Right. And slow returns coming in from Minneapolis. Normally by this time, 9:20, we have more votes than this. Yeah. Not clear exactly what's going on there. We want to come back here in just a short time with more from Michelle and Abu coming right up. evening, everyone. We are taking a close look at some key primary races tonight in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And we are going to start with a list of all the races that we are monitoring. Let's start with that 5th district of Ilhan Omar and Don Samuels. Still just 10% of the vote in. Obviously, you can see Don Samuels doing very well, hanging tough there against Ilhan Omar. Let's go to the 7th Congressional District. Steve Boyd was taking on incumbent Republican Michelle Fischbach in the primary. 36% of the vote is in. This race has not been called. Michelle Fischbach with a huge lead. Let's go to the 2nd Congressional District in the Republican primary, where Joe Tairab has been called as the winner in this race against Taylor Rahm, making it easier for Republicans. There was an issue there because Rahm had dropped out of the race, but he was still in the primary. Let's look at the U.S. Senate Republican primary between Joe Frazier and Royce White. This is a relatively close race, and this is a difficult race for Republicans. Let's look at the numbers here. 32% of the vote in, Royce White leading 38.7%, Joe Frazier 30.2%. We'll get back to that in just a second. We want to go to the U.S. Senate primary in Wisconsin. Eric Hovde has been declared the winner there. He will face Tammy Baldwin in November. This is one of the most important Senate races in the entire country. So we'll follow that. But let's go back to that U.S. Senate race in Minnesota on the Republican side, because you've got Royce White, who is the Republican nominee. Well, let's go to Royce White, the Republican nominee. A third of the vote in, Michelle. Your thoughts about this, because Royce White does have a significant lead. Obviously, anything could still happen. But this is going to be a problem for Republicans because he does have a lot of baggage, and you're going to have to explain that as a party.
Well, and I'm concerned what it does to House races. Lisa Damuth, Leader Damuth, has been doing such a good job working on recruiting and staying on message and getting people to the doors, and that is the next step for Republicans, is to flip the House. What does this do to down ballot races? So that's right. The battle against Amy Klobuchar, Senator Klobuchar, is always going to be tough for Republicans. What does this do down ballot?
Well, normally a contest against Amy Klobuchar is a slam dunk. This is what, a double slam dunk if it's Royce White, who has so many legal problems.
Nice basketball analogy.
It's a triple slam dunk, and here's why. If you go back to the 2014 cycle, when Republicans ran extreme candidates like Todd Akin, who said there was a form of legitimate rape, right? These types of Senate candidates aren't just bad in your state. Democrats run against them all across the country, and guess what we're going to call Roy Weiss? We're going to call him weird. This guy's a weird guy, and that's going to hurt down ballot, it's going to hurt in his race, and it's going to hurt Republicans nationally.
All right, let's take a look at the 5th Congressional District numbers again, because they should be coming in with more of them right now. This is the marquee race. It's a repeat of the 2022 race with 50.8%, still the same numbers. If I weren't on air, I'd call up my friends in the city of Minneapolis and say, what is going on here? Why is this so slow? Also call the Secretary of State's office, because this should be coming in a lot faster. They have automated machines in the city of Minneapolis. Of course, this is not just the city of Minneapolis. It's important to remember it has all those inner ring suburbs as well. But some people might be surprised that Don Samuels is hanging so tough, at least in these initial votes, because Ilhan Omar was expressing confidence in her ability to get out her vote this time. And she was disciplined about it. She was working about it. But this is August, and it's a primary, and maybe a lot of people just sat home.
There's no question. I think that's possible. And also, Don Samuels had a base of support in 2022. Those folks did not go anywhere. In fact, they probably doubled down with the context of the war in Gaza and Israel. And so I think Don Samuels has a high floor. The question is, can he reach up and get a majority?
And Don Samuels has gotten no help from the major Jewish groups that have fueled the races in other states involving the squad candidates. Jamal Bowman in New York, Cori Bush in Missouri, both were defeated after AIPAC, a Jewish group, put millions of dollars into defeating them. So really, it's interesting to see Don Samuels holding his own, without the monetary support that these other squad members have faced against them. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll go back to Wisconsin, and we'll take another look at the numbers that we have.
You're watching special election night coverage of Super Tuesday, live from WCCO News and streaming on CBS News Minnesota.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Esme Murphy. Thank you so much for watching Primary Night Special here on CBS News Minnesota. I'm joined by political strategist Michelle Benson, a former Republican state senator, and Abu Amara, a Democratic strategist. The polls have been closed in Minnesota for an hour and a half now, and the marquee race that people have been looking at is the 5th Congressional District. And I am busy texting my sources, state and local, to figure out why we don't have more votes in this race, because normally it is this race, this district race, that comes in by this time with a lot more votes. But what we're seeing here is Don Samuels, once again, just like he did 2 years ago, at least with these early votes, hanging tough despite being vastly outspent by Ilhan Omar. Don Samuels had raised about $1 million. Ilhan Omar at least $6 million. Also, Don Samuels was not getting the kind of national money that he was hoping to get this time around. Abu, your thoughts about this, because Ilhan Omar has worked very hard to turn this particular race around from what it was 2 years ago, where she almost lost.
Yeah, look, there's no question. For folks who thought that this was going to be a blowout, I think we're not paying attention to what happened in 2022. Don Samuels established himself as having a critical mass in the 5th Congressional District. Ilhan Omar has done a lot since then, a mea culpa, if you will, to try to address some of those concerns. The question's going to be, the Gaza war has galvanized thousands of voters in this district. Will that be enough to get it over the edge? Or has Ilhan learned from those lessons, mobilized enough voters to get 51% tonight?
Well, I think what's so interesting about her position, obviously she wants an immediate ceasefire, two-state solution, but she has supported the Biden administration, and she was really one of the first members of Congress to stick with Joe Biden when everybody was pounding on him to step back from the race. She was sticking with Joe Biden, which is a more moderate lane than some of the other squad members. I'm not sure she's getting the credit for that, but certainly there are some very strong feelings against her, especially in the Jewish community, where they feel for too long she has taken Israel for granted, that she has maligned Israel, and that she has maligned Israel's viewpoints and stances in various positions. Now, obviously, supporters of Ilhan Omar will disagree with that. The Gaza war is something, though, that has polarized a lot of people. Your thoughts about, Abu, about younger people and supporting Gaza and supporting the Palestinians here in this effort against Israel?
Well, there's no question. I think before this election, Ilhan Omar had been a public and longtime supporter of the plight of the Palestinian people. Absolutely. That's not a question. I think what happened is October 7th was a moment that our Jewish brothers and sisters were terrorized, right? People were kidnapped. And I think that has galvanized a lot of people to say, what can I do locally to transform those outcomes? Don Samuels had that floor before, and so the question's going to be, is it enough now? But I will say this. I think Ilhan has tried in her own way to address some of those concerns with the Jewish community here in the Twin Cities. But will it be enough? We will see tonight.
I think those in the Jewish community and leaders in the Jewish community that I have talked to have said she has definitely not done enough, but that is just what they have been saying all along in this race. In terms of Republicans and the Republican outlook on this, what are your thoughts about these initial votes coming in so strongly for Don Samuels, who is obviously a more conservative figure than Ilhan Omar? Everything's relative. This is the 5th District.
Yes. Don Samuels compared to me? Yeah, maybe a little bit. For his district, I think he's a good fit. And what you said about the Jewish community, they need to see Ilhan Omar authentically respecting their concerns. And I think there's been a lot of water gone under the bridge before she decided she needed to pull back on some of that activism. And I wouldn't say it was the war in Gaza that galvanized. It was the response. It was the squad's response to Gaza, to October 7th, that galvanized people. If they had understood the terror that Jewish families felt, I don't think they'd be in this position right now.
And I think at the same point, the people who are that I have interviewed, people who are Palestinians who have relatives over there, relatives that have been killed, there is agony on both sides. That's what's just so horrifying about this, is that there's such pain and such suffering on both sides, and yet there seems to be no resolution in sight.
And October 6th, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, it is a devastating tragedy as we look at the losses of life continue to mount in that area. Let's take a look here at some key Wisconsin races and important ballot questions. Let's put the graphics up here. We do know that Eric Hovde has won the Republican primary, and he will be facing Tammy Baldwin in the November election. There is Charles Barman, and I'm sorry that I didn't interview Charles Barman because he looks like a really interesting candidate. But obviously Eric Hovde, quite controversial in some respects because he has lived most of his adult life in other states other than Wisconsin. He has lived in California. He has 3 homes in California. He's a very wealthy man, but he did grow up in Wisconsin. He went to school in Wisconsin, went to UW-Madison. So there's been a long history of him identifying with Wisconsin. I think Democrats are going to make a big deal about this. In fact, Tammy Baldwin, I saw her speak at the same event that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz spoke at in Eau Claire. And Tammy Baldwin called him out on that very thing, that he was voted one of the most respected people in Orange County. And there's no Orange County in Wisconsin, it's in California.
That's right. Midwestern folks don't like carpetbaggers. It's pretty plain and simple. If you live the vast majority of your adult life in California and now you want to show up in Wisconsin and run for office, I think Democrats and Tammy Baldwin and Kamala Harris are going to have a problem with that. And I think he fits the contrast that Democrats want to make. A very rich man, just like Donald Trump, is running against a woman, a female strong leader. Democrats will take that contrast every time.
Is that going to work in Wisconsin?
Oh, absolutely. Tammy Baldwin has won.
No, is it going to work for him to come in like that in Wisconsin? I mean, I just think Wisconsin people identify so strongly with their state and embrace their state and its identity. I would think that that would be an uphill battle for Hovde. Obviously not in the primary, though, because he won going away.
That's right. I say this as someone born and raised in Madison, Wisconsin. Wisconsin people love local people. I think it's going to be tough for a guy who's been living in California to try to win a Senate seat in the Midwest.
Okay, well, as we break here, here's a look at some of the other congressional races around the state. And welcome back, folks. We do have some breaking news in the 5th Congressional District. We have gotten a massive flood of votes, and the AP has called this race. Ilhan Omar wins 56% to 42%, a huge win over Don Samuels. She has bested her record from 2 years ago by quite a bit. We're going to get back to this race, but Ilhan Omar declared the winner by the Associated Press with a convincing win over Don Samuels. Let's go now to Wisconsin and look at the races there with David Schumann.
Hi, Esme. Well, here today, late this afternoon, a lead volunteer at one of Hudson's polling places told me that turnout was very low. But the people who did come out, we talked to a lot of them. They were very motivated, which was really great to see. I mean, this was no presidential election, of course, but there were some interesting and important races for western Wisconsin. A lot of eyes on a couple of congressional House primaries, as well as the vote to determine which Republican will run against incumbent U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin later this year, and that has already been declared as the businessman Eric Hovde. And the one thing that was on every ballot in Wisconsin today were a couple referendum questions having to do with the authority the governor has to allocate and spend federal funds. And that has also been declared as no being the winner, which means that the governor will retain his authority to spend and allocate that money, which was the side that Democrats were pushing for. Now, whether some of these voters had planned to vote a long time in these races or just realized this morning it was primary day, we spoke to people who felt it was important to make their voice heard.
She actually emailed me saying that we actually need to vote today, and we didn't actually know that there was anything happening.
We try to instill these things in our kids, and I certainly grew up that way, not necessarily in the United States, but coming to the United States, we continue doing that. You know, we're proud of the country we live in, and want to contribute and make a change and difference.
It is a pretty simple thing, and the people that are working, well, it wasn't busy, that helps too, but it's very, very smooth, very explanatory. If you've never done it before, they would make it really easy for you.
Talking to Hudson's city clerk tonight, she told me that absentee voting continues to be popular post-pandemic, with about 1 in 5 voters choosing to mail in or drop off their ballots. And I just want to quickly say, quick shout out to all the election workers making this thing go today. We met several of them. They're so nice. Some of them are retired. They're volunteers, and they just do a great job. You heard that lady say it just now. They deserve a lot of credit for their efforts on a day like today.
All right, sounds good. And Eric Hovde winning against a couple of candidates in the primary. He will face Tammy Baldwin in November. We want to check in now with Amelia Santinello and Frank Vassalero on the news desk.
Hi, Esme. Thank you very much. You know, we're, of course, going to be busy following tonight's primaries. And in addition to that, we'll have some context for you. We also have team coverage with reporters in Minnesota and Wisconsin.
And then a story that you'll only see on WCCO. A little girl is credited with helping her dad fight off an armed robber. We have the stunning surveillance video of the 8-year-old using a bat to stop the robber. Hear from the brave 8-year-old's father about what happened.
Then this was not the news Vikings fans wanted to hear. Rookie quarterback J.J. McCarthy needs knee surgery. What happened? How soon can he return to the team? We'll have the very latest.
And in your next weather headlines, a few heavy downpours and thunderstorms are possible over the next few days. We're going to tell you when and where next on our news at 10.
And everybody who heard that wants to see that 8-year-old in action.
No
we
kidding.
will be watching.
Pretty amazing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amelia and Frank. All right, we've got some big news here for you folks. First of all, let's take a look at the U.S. Senate race, the Republican primary, and see what's happening there. This is a big race. The winner will take on Senator Amy Klobuchar, who is an elective force. A few years ago, she won actually, I think, 85 of Minnesota's 87 counties. This is the same amount right here. Okay, same thing. And then we do have, Royce White has been declared the winner. That is big news. Royce White declared the winner. We have to go right to break. We will be right back, folks. Welcome back, everyone, on this primary night in Minnesota and Wisconsin. We want to take you to some important ballot questions in Wisconsin. The no vote in both the first and second ballot question won. This is the Democratic position. The Democratic side won in both cases here. This had to do with federal spending and spending of federal monies, but the Democrats are going to call that a big victory. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But let's go right now. There's question 2, another big victory for Democrats. This is a big deal, folks, because it shows an energized Democratic base. Let's go now to the U.S. Senate race, the Republican primary, where Royce White has been declared the winner here. This is going to pose some interesting issues for Republicans. He does have a lot of baggage, including claims that he does not pay his child support, numerous court appearances, that sort of thing. And then let's go to the 5th district race, where Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has pulled out a decisive victory against Don Samuels. This is a big win for Ilhan Omar. Let's talk quickly about those ballot questions. Michelle, your read on that, because Republicans were banking on that in Wisconsin, that there would be a strong yes vote. They lost.
And so if it was close, you could attribute some of the no's to maybe it was too complicated and people just voted no. But when you look at the margin they have there and the fact that they flipped the Supreme Court, I think Democrats have built a machine in Wisconsin. They're going to keep building that machine. Success breeds success. And so I think Republicans in Wisconsin are going to have to get really serious about how they build a machine and push back.
And Donald Trump is going to have to get more serious about Wisconsin as well. Your thoughts about these ballot questions, Abu?
Yeah, these types of things are convoluted. They're hard to explain to voters. So that tells me that the Wisconsin Democratic Party and allied groups have done a fantastic job of going door to door, connecting with people, communicating what the stakes are, and getting people to turn out in a short period of time. And I think that's a reflection of what could portend for Wisconsin in November.
All right, that would be good news for Democrats. Let's go to that U.S. Senate race where Royce White has been declared the victor. Michelle, this is a hard one for Republicans because I know many Republicans, including Governor Tim Pawlenty, other prominent Republicans, had all lined up behind Joe Frazier. Now they're dealing with the Royce White, the candidate who got the nomination, who has a lot of baggage.
And he's going to have a really tough time raising money. He's going to have a tough time building into anything resembling the middle. And so I don't see how this strengthens the Republican Party at all. And does it actually do damage down ballot?
Well, that down ballot damage, but also I think the credibility of the Republican Party is on the line, don't you think?
I'm not going to go that far because I'd still like to have some hope that we can build something here. I think we had more of a chance when Joe Biden was at the top of the Democrat ticket. I think some of those middle-of-the-road fiscal conservative or economically conservative folks would look at the Republican Party. I don't know how Royce White brings in more of those folks.
All right, and let's look at the 5th district numbers. A big win for Ilhan Omar, who came very close to losing a couple of years ago. In other states, squad members in New York and Missouri have been voted out. She has been voted in by a very strong margin there, 56 to 42%. Abu, your thoughts?
Look, there's no question when it comes to the squad, Ilhan Omar is the strongest and most formidable candidate in the squad. I mean, she was able to raise millions of dollars.
Stronger than AOC?
I believe she's up there with AOC. I do, because AOC is in a state like New York where everybody's a Democrat. At least here in Minnesota, we have Republicans. And second is Ilhan Omar has this unique ability to connect on a personal level. Set aside what you think about her politics. When you're in a room with Ilhan Omar, she's a captivating figure, and she's been able to connect. If you look at the numbers, she's actually got voter turnout up on her side from 2 years ago when she almost lost. That tells me she learned her lesson, she mobilized more voters, and now she's won.
And she's also said she's messed up last time by not working hard enough on it.
And I would say for Republicans, did you see what Ilhan Omar did? She thought she was safe, she got a little bit challenged, and she worked harder. And now when it's time for us to try to win a governor's race or another statewide race, there's going to be more energy in the 5th Congressional District. Right. And so they build a machine, and success breeds success. And like Tom Emmer helped Michelle Fischbach flip and help support Brad Finstead in the 1st, Ilhan Omar is going to start building out and start flipping things and build some power for herself.
All right, well, thank you so much. Thank you to you two. You've been great. Thank you for joining us this evening for our CBS News Minnesota primary special. And a special thank you, as I said, to Abu Amara and Michelle Benson. Our primary night coverage continues next on the news at 10 with Frank and Amelia. Remember, WCCO.com is the best way to get caught up on the day's news. Next, weather impacts and big events for you to enjoy around town. Get your headlines and alerts with the CBS News app or stream CBS News Minnesota on Pluto TV for free. Good night, everyone.
10, an armed robber beaten back by a little girl and her baseball bat.
She's only 8 years old, but I'm proud of her.
The video